The infirmary lights at Stargate Command felt harsh and artificial after weeks of navigating by Moya's bioluminescent glow. O'Neill sat on an examination table while Dr. Janet Fraser, SGC's chief medical officer, ran a scanner across his ribcage for the third time, her expression caught between professional concern and exasperated familiarity. "Colonel, your cellular structure shows exposure to at least 4 different types of exotic radiation. Your neural pathways have minor scarring consistent with some kind of electromagnetic interference, and according to these readings, you were exposed to vacuum conditions for approximately 47 seconds. Fraser lowered the scanner, her brown eyes sharp. "Want to revise your pretty standard mission assessment?" "Not particularly." O'Neill winced as she prodded a bruise on his shoulder, courtesy of a Peacekeeper Pulse rifle's recoil during the transport pod dogfight. "How are Teal'c and Crichton?" Fraser's expression softened slightly. "Teal'c's symbiote is working overtime repairing neural damage from whatever this Aurora chair did to him. I've never seen probe burns like these. They targeted specific memory centers with surgical precision. He'll recover, but he's going to have headaches for weeks." She consulted her tablet. As for Commander Crichton, physically, he's malnourished, dehydrated, and showing signs of long-term stress. But mentally, he keeps asking if this is real, if Earth is really below his feet or if it's another hallucination. Fraser's voice carried genuine sympathy. "Colonel, that man has been lost in alien space for 3 years. The psychological trauma alone will be handled by the Air Force's best shrinks, I'm sure. But right now, I need him functional for the debriefing." O'Neill slid off the examination table, ignoring Fraser's protest. "Hammond's waiting, and we've got bigger problems than bruised ribs." The briefing room was packed. General Hammond sat at the head of the table, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he reviewed preliminary reports. Major Paul Davis from the Pentagon occupied one side, his expression skeptical. Dr. Bill Lee from Area 51 fidgeted with a recording device, eager to hear about interdimensional physics. And at the far end sat John Crichton, freshly showered and wearing borrowed BDUs that didn't quite fit, looking like a man still processing the impossible reality of home. SG-1 filed in, Carter with 3 tablets loaded with technical data, Daniel carrying a hastily assembled cultural analysis, Teal'c moving carefully but upright, and O'Neill taking his usual seat with practiced casualness that fooled no one. "All right, people," Hammond began, his Texas accent carrying command authority that filled the room. "I've read Colonel O'Neill's preliminary report. Dimensional wormhole, living alien ship, escaped prisoners, torture by an interdimensional hybrid, and the successful rescue and return of Commander John Crichton to Earth after 3 years missing and presumed dead." He paused, looking directly at O'Neill. "Colonel, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of this is the usual SG-1 exaggeration?" "Maybe a 2, sir. Possibly a 3 if you count Rigel's ego." Hammond's lips twitched fractionally. "Major Davis, your assessment." The Pentagon liaison cleared his throat. "General, with all due respect, this story is beyond classified protocols. A dimensional bridge to another universe. Living starships. We're talking about potential security breaches that could expose Earth to entirely new categories of threats. I recommend immediate containment." "Containment of what?" Daniel interrupted, his usual diplomatic restraint strained by exhaustion. "Major, we've already been there and back. The bridge exists whether we acknowledge it or not. Pretending it didn't happen won't change the fact that someone in that universe now knows about the Stargate program." "Which brings us to Scorpius," Carter added, activating one of her tablets to display the schematics she'd memorized from the command carrier. "General, this individual represents a genuine threat. He's brilliant, ruthless, and obsessed with wormhole weapons. During Teal'c's interrogation, he extracted partial information about the Stargate network, Earth's location in our universe, and the existence of ancient technology." Teal'c's voice was gravelly, still recovering from the neural probe burns. "Scorpius possesses the resources and determination to eventually locate the dimensional bridge we created. If he succeeds, Earth will face an invasion force utilizing technology we have never encountered. Hammond leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. Commander Crichton, you've dealt with this Scorpius personally. What's your assessment? Crichton had been silent until now, his eyes distant as if still expecting to wake up on Moya. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 years fighting to survive. General, Scorpius tortured me for cycles, years trying to extract wormhole equations from my head. He didn't stop when I begged. He didn't stop when I broke. He only stopped when I nearly died, and then he healed me just enough to start again. Crichton's hands clenched on the table. He's not evil in the cartoon villain sense. He genuinely believes he's saving civilizations. But that belief makes him more dangerous, not less. He will never stop. Never. And if he gets access to your Stargate network, he'd have exactly what he needs to build wormhole weapons, Carter finished quietly. Stable addresses across thousands of worlds, instantaneous travel capabilities, and ancient power sources to fuel his experiments. The briefing room fell silent. O'Neill watched Hammond process the information, a good commander weighing threats, resources, and acceptable risks. The general had dealt with gold invasions, replicator incursions, and Ori crusades, but this was different. This was a threat from outside their reality entirely. Dr. Lee, Hammond said, turning to the Area 51 scientist. Theoretical question. Could this Scorpius actually find a way to our universe? Lee adjusted his glasses nervously. Well, General, based on Major Carter's data about the dimensional bridge, the energy signature would leave quantum traces in both universes. Think of it like footprints in space-time. If Scorpius has access to sufficiently advanced scanning technology. He does, Crichton interrupted. Peacekeeper tech isn't as advanced as ancient stuff, but it's centuries beyond current Earth. If he's dedicated resources to analyzing the dimensional rift, he's probably already found the signature. Then we need to close it, Major Davis stated flatly. Permanently, before this becomes an interdimensional incident. We don't know how, Carter admitted. The dimensional bridge was created accidentally by a malfunctioning Stargate attempting to establish a connection across realities. We successfully reopened it using Moya's starburst drive, but that was following existing quantum pathways. Actually, sealing a dimensional rift would require. Every tablet in the room simultaneously flashed red. Alarms blared through Stargate Command, and Hammond was on his feet instantly. Report. A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. General, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations in the gate room. The Stargate is activating, but we're not receiving any incoming wormhole. It's like the gate is trying to dial itself. Carter was already moving, her tablets forgotten as she sprinted toward the control room. O'Neill, Teal'c, and Daniel followed, with Crichton close behind. They reached the observation window overlooking the gate room just as the 7th chevron locked. But instead of the usual stable event horizon, the wormhole erupted in chaotic fractals of blue and white energy. The surface rippled like disturbed water, and through the instability, O'Neill caught glimpses of something on the other side. Not a planet, not space, Moya's organic corridors. It's a dimensional bridge, Carter breathed, her hands already working the control room systems. Someone's opening a wormhole from the Farscape universe. The energy signature matches what we created during our return, but it's much less stable. Can we close the iris? Hammond demanded. Negative, sir. The iris won't stop dimensional wormholes. They're not bound by normal physics. Anything coming through will. The wormhole pulsed, and something tumbled through. A figure in black leather armor, moving with combat-trained precision despite obvious injuries. She hit the gate room floor in a roll, came up with a pulse pistol drawn, and swept the room for threats before her eyes found the observation window. Aaron's son, ex-Peacekeeper Commando, looked like she'd fought her way through hell to get here. O'Neill, her voice carried through the gate room speakers, urgent and strained. Shut it down, close the connection before. The The wormhole exploded outward again, wider this time, and 3 Peacekeeper soldiers materialized in the gate room. They opened fire immediately, pulse blasts hammering into concrete and observation windows. Alarms screamed. Erin returned fire, her shots precise even as she dove for cover behind the ramp. "Security teams to the gate room," Hammond ordered. "Lock it down." But more Peacekeepers were coming through, a coordinated assault team moving with military precision. They established firing positions, laid down suppressing fire, and began advancing toward the control room. Erin was outnumbered 5-1, wounded and running out of cover. O'Neill was already moving toward the armory. "Teal'c, Daniel with me. We've got hostiles in the gate room." "Colonel, that's a security matter," Major Davis started. "Those are Peacekeepers using pulse weapons against concrete walls," O'Neill snapped back. "Security teams have P-90s. They're outgunned and they don't know the enemy's tactics. We do." He grabbed a P-90, checked the magazine, and sprinted toward the gate room with his team following. Behind them, Carter stayed at the controls, her fingers flying across keyboards as she tried to destabilize the dimensional wormhole. But the connection was being held open from the other side, reinforced by technology she didn't fully understand. Through the still-active wormhole, more Peacekeepers emerged. Then something larger, a piece of equipment carried by 4 soldiers, looking disturbingly like a portable weapons platform. They began assembling it with mechanical efficiency. Crichton appeared beside Carter, his eyes locked on the device. "Oh, Frel, that's a frag cannon, automated heavy weapon. They're setting up a beachhead." A beachhead. In Stargate Command, Carter's mind raced through defensive protocols. Why? What are they trying to accomplish? Scorpius doesn't do anything small if he's sending soldiers through a dimensional bridge. Crichton's expression went pale. He's not just invading. He's testing whether the bridge can handle military-grade equipment. Once he confirms it's stable, he'll send everything: carriers, troops, weapons. This is a scouting force. Down in the gate room, O'Neill, Teal'c, and Daniel burst through the entrance with weapons ready. The Peacekeepers reacted instantly, pulse fire forcing them into cover. But O'Neill had fought in close-quarters combat for decades. He knew how to use terrain, suppressing fire, and tactical positioning. "Teal'c, high left." Daniel watched the ramp. Teal'c's staff weapon discharged with its distinctive energy blast, catching a Peacekeeper in the chest and hurling him backward. Daniel's P-90 stitched bullets across another soldier's armor. The Peacekeeper went down, armor cracked, but the soldier was still moving. These weren't the disposable Jaffa warriors they usually fought. These were professional soldiers with training and equipment to match. Erin used the distraction to advance, her pulse pistol taking down 2 Peacekeepers with headshots that spoke to years of military training. She reached O'Neill's position, breathing hard, blood seeping from a wound in her shoulder. "Took you long enough," she said with dark humor. "We've been back for like an hour. What the hell happened?" Scorpius activated a device. Ancient origin, recovered from a derelict ship, created stable dimensional rifts across multiple points in space-time. Erin reloaded her pistol with practiced efficiency. He's not just targeting Earth. He's opening bridges to dozens of locations, testing which ones can support sustained transit. Your Stargate command is one of them. The frag cannon finished assembly and began tracking targets. Its automated systems locked onto the command room windows where Carter and Hammond observed. The weapon charged with an ominous hum. "Everyone down," O'Neill shouted. The frag cannon fired. The explosive round hit the observation window with catastrophic force, and the reinforced glass shattered in a spray of deadly shrapnel. Carter threw herself backward, covering her head as debris filled the control room. Alarms became deafening, and somewhere, emergency bulkheads began sealing to prevent atmosphere loss. Through the smoke and chaos, the dimensional wormhole remained stable and more Peacekeepers were coming through. The beachhead was expanding. In the control room, Carter pulled herself upright, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. Crichton was beside her, shaken but functional. Hammond had taken cover behind a console, his sidearm drawn despite the futility of a pistol against pulse rifles. "Major Carter, I don't care what it takes," Hammond said with deadly calm. "Close that wormhole, now." Carter's hands returned to the controls, but her earlier attempts had failed. The dimensional bridge was being stabilized from the Farscape side by technology that operated on principles she didn't fully understand. She needed a different approach. "Commander Crichton, you've lived with wormhole physics in your head for 3 years. If you were Scorpius, how would you stabilize a dimensional rift?" Crichton closed his eyes, and Carter saw his face twist with pain, not physical, but the agony of accessing memories that had been forcibly extracted and examined by the Aurora chair. Quantum entanglement. He'd use paired particles to create resonance across dimensional barriers, like tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency. You'd need an anchor point on both sides. "The Stargate," Carter realized. "Our gate is the anchor. If we can disrupt its connection to the dimensional frequency." "You'd collapse the bridge," Crichton finished. "But it would require overloading the gate's capacitors with energy feedback. Basically, you'd be creating a controlled DHD malfunction on a massive scale. That could damage the gate permanently. Better than letting Scorpius establish a permanent portal to Earth." Carter looked at Hammond, who nodded once. Authorization given. She began rerouting power from SGC's backup Nakwata generators directly into the Stargate's control crystals, creating a feedback loop that would build until the gate's safety systems failed. It was dangerous, potentially catastrophic, and their only option. "Overload sequence initiated," she announced. 30 seconds to cascade failure." In the gate room, O'Neill heard the announcement over the still-functioning speakers. 30 seconds, people. We need to hold them here." But the peacekeepers were advancing in coordinated fire teams, their tactics flawless and their equipment superior. The frag cannon had repositioned, targeting the gate room entrance to prevent reinforcements. And through the dimensional wormhole, O'Neill caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. Scorpius himself, standing on the other side, his cooling suit's mechanisms visible through the rippling event horizon. The hybrid was watching, calculating, and learning about Earth's defenses and responses. 20 seconds. Aaron was out of ammunition. Teal'c's staff weapon had overheated. Daniel was down to his last magazine, and the peacekeepers kept coming, professional and relentless. O'Neill made a decision born of decades of combat experience and the absolute refusal to let enemies occupy American soil. He grabbed a fragmentation grenade from his tactical vest, technically against protocol for shipboard use, but these were extraordinary circumstances. "Fire in the hole." He threw the grenade directly into the cluster of advancing peacekeepers. The explosion was deafening in the confined space, and the concussive force knocked friend and foe alike to the deck. But it bought them precious seconds. 10 seconds. The Stargate's inner ring began spinning wildly, the control crystals overloading exactly as Carter had planned. Energy feedback surged through the dimensional bridge, destabilizing the quantum entanglement that held it open. The wormhole started to collapse, its surface fracturing into unstable fragments. Scorpius saw it happening. Through the dying wormhole, O'Neill watched the hybrid's expression shift from cold calculation to frustrated realization. He'd failed to establish his beachhead, this time. 5 seconds. The remaining peacekeepers in the gate room tried to retreat through the collapsing wormhole, but dimensional physics were unforgiving. 2 made it through. 3 were caught halfway when the bridge collapsed, and their screams cut off instantly as they were torn apart by competing gravitational forces. The Stargate's 7th chevron disengaged with a sound like breaking crystal. The event horizon collapsed completely, and the dimensional bridge ceased to exist. Silence fell over the gate room, the kind that follows violence when adrenaline begins to fade and the cost becomes apparent. O'Neill did a quick head count. Aaron was down but breathing, her shoulder wound serious but not immediately fatal. Teal'c had taken a pulse blast to the leg, his symbiote already working to heal the damage. Daniel was unconscious, hit by debris from the grenade blast but alive. and scattered across the gate room floor were the bodies of peacekeepers who died far from home in a universe they'd never understand. "Gate room secure," O'Neill transmitted to the control room. "We need medical teams down here, multiple casualties." The response was immediate. Dr. Fraser and her staff flooded the gate room with practiced efficiency, triaging wounded and stabilizing critical cases. Hammond descended from the control room, stepping over debris with the calm of someone who'd seen too many battles to be shocked by one more. "Colonel, status report." "Dimensional bridge collapsed, sir. 14 hostile KIA, 3 captured mid-transit, and, well, they're not coming back. Aaron's son successfully crossed over to warn us. My team sustained injuries but will recover." O'Neill looked at the damaged gate room, scorch marks on walls, shattered observation windows, and the gate itself showing hairline fractures in its Naquata structure. "Sir, this was a coordinated assault. Scorpius isn't just experimenting anymore. He's making moves." "Then we need to make ours." Hammond's expression was granite. "Major Carter." Carter appeared at the observation window's shattered frame, her face streaked with blood and dust, but her eyes sharp. "Sir." "How long before Scorpius can reopen that dimensional bridge?" "Unknown, sir. We damaged our gate's ability to accept dimensional connections, but if he finds another anchor point or develops alternative technology." She paused, running calculations in her head. "Hours, maybe days, but he will try again." Crichton joined her, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who'd learned Scorpius's patterns through painful experience. "He's already analyzing what went wrong. He'll adapt his approach, reinforce his technology, and try different entry points. Next time, it won't be a scouting force. It'll be a full invasion." Hammond processed this with the pragmatism of a career military officer facing an evolving threat. "Then we have 2 options. Wait for him to attack again from a position of strength or take the fight to him before he's ready." O'Neill knew where this was going. He'd been in similar briefings before, when the Gold threatened Earth, when the replicators emerged, when the Ori began their crusade. Sometimes defense wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to strike first. "Sir, you're suggesting we return to the Farscape universe." "I'm suggesting we can't afford to sit here waiting for an interdimensional invasion. If this Scorpius has ancient technology capable of opening dimensional rifts, he's a threat to Earth regardless of which universe he operates from." Hammond's Texas drawl carried steel underneath. "We need intelligence on his capabilities, his locations, and his plans. And we need to coordinate with local allies who understand his tactics." "Moya's crew," Daniel said weakly, Fraser helping him sit up despite his protests. "They've been fighting peacekeepers and Scorpius for years. They know how he thinks, how he operates." Aaron coughed, blood flecking her lips as Fraser worked on her shoulder wound. "Moya is damaged. Dargo, Jean, Chiana, Rigel, and Pilot barely escaped when Scorpius activated the ancient device. We scattered across the Uncharted Territories to avoid capture. I came through the dimensional bridge to warn you, but the others are still out there, hunted and separated," O'Neill finished. "So we go back, we find them, we consolidate our forces, and we stop Scorpius before he turns Earth into his personal wormhole laboratory." Hammond nodded slowly. "I'll need to brief the President and the IOA, but given the immediate threat, I'm authorizing a preemptive strike mission. SG-1 will return to the Farscape universe, locate Moya's crew, gather intelligence on Scorpius's dimensional technology, and neutralize the threat if possible." He paused, looking at each of them. "This is voluntary. You've already been to hell and back once. I won't order you to do it again." O'Neill didn't hesitate. "We're going, sir. We don't leave allies hanging, and we don't let threats to Earth go unanswered." "Indeed," Teal'c added, despite Fraser's attempts to keep him still for examination. Daniel nodded in agreement, though he looked like he could barely stand. And Carter's expression was pure determination, the same look she got when told something was theoretically impossible but tactically necessary. Crichton stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "General Hammond, I'm coming too. I just got home after 3 years and the smart play would be staying here, debriefing and trying to rebuild my life. But Scorpius tortured me because he thought I had wormhole knowledge. Now he knows Earth has actual wormhole technology. This is my fault. I need to help fix it. Commander, you're a civilian with no current military standing. I'm an astronaut with IASA training, 3 years of combat experience in the Uncharted Territories, and intimate knowledge of peacekeeper tactics, Scorpius's psychology, and the crew of Moya. I'm the most qualified person you've got for this mission. Crichton's smile was grim. Plus, I owe Dargo, Jean, and the others. They kept me alive when I should have died 100 times over. I'm not abandoning them now. Hammond studied the astronaut for a long moment, then nodded. Approved. You'll operate under SG-1's command structure and follow Colonel O'Neill's orders. Clear. Crystal, sir. Then you have 72 hours to prepare. Major Carter, you'll need to repair the gate's dimensional connection capability and find a way to re-establish the bridge without Moya's starburst drive. Dr. Lee and the Area 51 team are at your disposal. Carter was already mentally cataloging what she'd need. Sir, we'll also need supplies, weapons, medical equipment, food, and technical gear. We don't know how long we'll be there, and we can't rely on local resources. Approved. Colonel O'Neill, coordinate with Major Davis on tactical loadout. Bring whatever you need to wage asymmetric warfare against a technologically superior force. O'Neill's grin was sharp. Been there, done that, got the scars to prove it. As the briefing broke up and teams scattered to their assignments, O'Neill caught Erin being wheeled toward the infirmary on a gurney. Despite her injuries, her eyes were alert, tracking threats and exits with ingrained paranoia. Erin, you good? Define good, Colonel. I crossed dimensions to warn you about an invasion, got shot crossing your gate room, and now I'm being treated by primitive medical technology that doesn't include tissue regeneration or cellular reconstruction. Her smile was pained but genuine. But I'm alive and Scorpius didn't establish his beachhead. So yes, good. What happened after we left? How did Scorpius get ancient technology? Erin's expression darkened. 3 solar days after you returned to your universe, we detected an energy surge from a derelict near the Flax Field. Dargo wanted to investigate, thought it might be salvageable technology. It was a trap. Scorpius had seeded the derelict with an ancient device, waiting for someone curious enough to activate it. He set bait, Erin confirmed. The device created dimensional rifts across multiple coordinates simultaneously. We barely escaped before peacekeepers flooded the area. Moya was damaged in the retreat. Her starburst chamber took a direct hit from a marauder squadron. We scattered to survive. Last I heard, Dargo was heading toward the Budung graveyard. Jean sought sanctuary with the Delvian priests, and Chiana disappeared into the criminal networks. Pilot and Rigel stayed with Moya, but she's too damaged to travel far. O'Neill filed the information away. So when we go back, we're not just facing Scorpius. We're hunting for scattered allies across hostile space with no immediate backup. Welcome to the Uncharted Territories. It only gets worse from here. Fraser interrupted, her medical authority brooking no argument. Colonel, my patient needs surgery and rest. You can debrief her after I've extracted the pulse rifle fragments from her shoulder and stabilized her collapsed lung. O'Neill stepped back, letting the medical team work. As they wheeled Erin towards surgery, he caught her voice one last time. O'Neill, don't trust anyone in the Uncharted Territories except Moya's crew. Out there, everyone's a criminal, a predator, or bait. Sometimes all three. Sounds like a typical Thursday for SG-1. Her laugh turned into a cough, but the humor reached her eyes. Then you'll fit right in. 72 hours. 3 days to prepare for an interdimensional mission with incomplete intelligence, scattered allies, and an enemy who'd already proven he could breach Earth's defenses. O'Neill had faced worse odds. Probably. Maybe. He headed toward the armory, already making mental lists of everything they'd need. Weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, technical equipment, and enough C4 to make Scorpius regret ever hearing about Earth. The mission clock was running, and across dimensional barriers, Scorpius was planning his next move. But this time SG-1 would be ready, and this time they weren't just defending, they were taking the fight to him. The gate room at Stargate Command had been transformed into a staging area for interdimensional warfare. Crates of equipment lined the walls, P-90s, ZAT guns, Claymore mines, C4 explosives, medical kits, MREs, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. Which, O'Neill reflected as he checked the magazine on his fourth P-90, was exactly what they were preparing for. Major Carter stood before the partially repaired Stargate, surrounded by tablets, portable diagnostic equipment, and 3 extremely nervous Area 51 scientists. Dr. Lee fidgeted with a modified ancient control crystal, while Carter explained the dimensional bridge mechanics for the 5th time. The Stargate's normal function creates stable wormholes through spatial coordinates, she said, her voice carrying the patience of someone teaching advanced physics to toddlers. But dimensional travel requires resonating at a frequency that exists between realities. Think of it like tuning a radio. We need to find the exact frequency where our universe overlaps with the Farscape universe. But Major Carter, Dr. Lee protested weakly, without Moya's biological starburst drive providing the initial dimensional signature, how do we establish that frequency? Carter smiled, and O'Neill recognized that particular expression, the one that meant she'd solved a problem everyone else thought impossible. We don't establish it, we listen for it. Commander Crichton's neural implant, the one containing wormhole knowledge, emits a faint quantum signature. When he passed through the dimensional bridge the first time, that signature created a resonance pattern. I've been scanning for matching frequencies, and I found this. She activated a display showing complex waveforms that looked like abstract art to O'Neill, but apparently meant something to the scientists. Their eyes widened. That's an active dimensional frequency, one of them breathed. Broadcasting from the Farscape universe, but what's generating it? Unknown. Could be Scorpius's ancient device, could be residual energy from Moya's damaged starburst drive, could be a dozen other sources. Carter's expression grew serious. But it's stable enough to lock onto. If we modulate the Stargate's output to match that frequency, we can re-establish the dimensional bridge. For how long? Hammond's voice carried from the observation window, where he stood with Major Davis and several Joint Chiefs representatives who'd arrived via secure video feed. Unknown, sir. The frequency is fluctuating, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. We'll have a window of opportunity, but I can't predict how long it'll last. Could be hours, could be minutes. Then we go through fast and hope we can find another way back, O'Neill said, slinging his tactical vest over his shoulders. The weight was familiar, comforting, pouches filled with magazines, grenades, demo charges, and the accumulated gear of someone who'd learned that being overprepared was better than being dead. Teal'c approached, moving with only slight stiffness from his healing leg wound. His staff weapon was secured across his back, and he carried a Peacekeeper pulse rifle they'd salvaged from the gate room attack. O'Neill, I have prepared additional supplies according to Aaron Sun's recommendations. She suggests we avoid projectile weapons when possible. The Peacekeeper's armor is designed to deflect kinetic force. Which is why we're bringing these. Carter held up what looked like a modified ZAT gun, except the energy matrix had been reconfigured. I've been working with Commander Crichton to reverse engineer Peacekeeper pulse technology. These hybrids use our ZAT power cells but fire pulse charges similar to their weapons. Not as powerful as the originals, but they'll penetrate Peacekeeper armor. O'Neill took one, tested the weight and grip. How many shots? Approximately 40 before the power cell depletes. And before you ask, yes, I made enough for the entire team. Carter, have I mentioned lately that you're terrifying when you put your mind to something? Not since last Tuesday, sir. Daniel emerged from the infirmary, still moving carefully but cleared for duty by a very reluctant Dr. Fraser. He carried his usual kit, linguistic references, cultural analysis tools, and a single P-90 that he handled with the familiarity of someone who'd learned that archaeology in the Stargate program required firepower. "Jack, I've been reviewing what little we know about the Uncharted Territories' political structure. It's chaotic doesn't even begin to cover it. No central government, no unified laws, just loose coalitions of species and criminal organizations operating on survival and profit. Sounds like the Goa'uld system without the false god complex. Worse, the Goa'uld at least maintained order within their territories. The Uncharted Territories are truly lawless, which means we can't rely on diplomacy or treaties. Every interaction is a negotiation from zero trust." Crichton joined them, now wearing combat fatigues that actually fit and carrying equipment that spoke to 3 years of adapting to alien technology. His pulse pistol sat in a worn holster, and he'd acquired a Peacekeeper commando knife from somewhere. But what caught O'Neill's attention was the haunted look that never quite left the astronaut's eyes, the psychological scars of prolonged isolation and torture. "Crichton, you ready for this?" "No, but I'm going anyway." Crichton checked his pistol's charge with practiced efficiency. "Colonel, I need you to understand something about where we're going. The Uncharted Territories aren't just dangerous, they're actively hostile to outsiders. Every species has an angle, every deal has a catch, and trust is a currency more valuable than weapons-grade platinum. We've dealt with hostile environments before. Not like this. The Goa'uld want to rule you. The replicators want to consume you. But in the Uncharted Territories, they just want to use you until you're not useful anymore, then discard you. Moya's crew survived by being too stubborn to die and too dangerous to ignore. You'll need that same mindset." O'Neill studied the younger man, seeing echoes of his own experiences in hostile territory. "You survived 3 years out there, we'll manage. I survived because I had Moya's crew watching my back. Dargo pulled me out of Peacekeeper prisons. Jean healed me when I should have died. Aaron taught me to fight. Pilot guided me through situations that should have been fatal." Crichton's voice carried raw honesty. "Alone, I would have been dead in a week. So when we find them, and we will find them, you follow their lead on local situations. They know how to survive out there." "Understood, but when it comes to tactical operations against Scorpius, you follow my lead. Deal?" Crichton's grin was slightly manic. "Deal. Just don't expect Uncharted Territories logic to match Earth military doctrine." A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "General Hammond, Major Carter reports the Stargate is ready for dimensional bridge activation. We have a stable lock on the target frequency." Hammond descended from the observation window, his expression carrying the weight of sending teams into situations he couldn't control. He'd done it hundreds of times with SG-1, but this was different. This wasn't just another planet through the gate. This was another universe entirely. "Colonel O'Neill, your mission parameters are clear. Locate and extract Moya's crew, gather intelligence on Scorpius's dimensional technology, and neutralize the threat to Earth if possible." But Hammond's voice hardened. "If the situation becomes untenable, you abort immediately. I won't lose SG-1 to an interdimensional war we can't win." "Understood, sir. We'll bring everyone home." "See that you do." Hammond extended his hand, and O'Neill shook it, a gesture between old soldiers who'd survived too many conflicts to take survival for granted. "Good luck, Colonel." SG-1 assembled before the Stargate, their equipment checked and double-checked. O'Neill took point with Teal'c, Carter positioned center with technical gear, Daniel behind her with cultural references, and Crichton bringing up the rear with his pulse pistol ready. They were as prepared as possible for a mission with too many unknowns and insufficient intelligence. Carter activated the dimensional bridge protocol from her portable control unit. The Stargate's inner ring began rotating, but instead of the normal chevron encoding sequence, each symbol glowed with unstable energy. The 7th chevron locked, and the wormhole erupted, not the stable blue pool they were used to, but a rippling cascade of colors that hurt to look at directly. Dimensional bridge established, Carter reported. Frequency is stable, but I'm reading fluctuations. We have approximately 15 minutes before it becomes too unstable to traverse safely. Then we go now. O'Neill adjusted his P90 and stepped toward the event horizon. For the record, I hate interdimensional travel. Noted, sir. He stepped through, and reality folded around him in ways that made normal gate travel feel pleasant by comparison. The dimensional bridge didn't just move him through space, it moved him through the fundamental structure of existence itself. He felt his atoms stretching, compressing, existing in two places simultaneously before finally collapsing into a singular form. He emerged into chaos. They weren't on Moya. They weren't even in space. The dimensional bridge had deposited them on some kind of trading station, a massive structure cobbled together from a dozen different ship types, filled with species O'Neill had never seen and couldn't begin to categorize. The air smelled of ozone, exotic spices, and things he didn't want to identify. And everywhere, beings were staring at the humans who just materialized out of nowhere. Carter stumbled through behind him, followed by Teal'c, Daniel, and Crichton. The dimensional wormhole collapsed immediately, leaving them stranded without immediate means of return. Carter, where the hell are we? She consulted her equipment, frowning at readings that made no sense. Sir, I'm not sure. The dimensional bridge should have locked onto Moya's last known coordinates, but something interfered with the targeting. We're somewhere in the Uncharted Territories, but I can't get a precise location without access to local navigation systems. We're on a commerce planet, Crichton said quietly, his eyes scanning the crowd with practiced paranoia. Look, traders, smugglers, information brokers. This is neutral ground where deals get made, and people disappear if they ask too many questions. A large reptilian being approached, its multiple eyes focusing on their weapons with professional assessment. It spoke in a language O'Neill didn't recognize, harsh and guttural. Daniel stepped forward, his linguistic training immediately engaged. I don't have a reference for this language, but the body language suggests either territorial challenge or commercial inquiry. Let me, Crichton said, activating a small device attached to his collar, a translator microbe injection that Moya's crew had given him years ago. He responded in the same guttural language, his tone carefully neutral. The being's posture shifted from aggressive to merely wary. It gestured toward a section of the station, spoke again, and departed without waiting for a response. What did it say? O'Neill asked. Rough translation. Armed strangers appearing from nowhere attract attention. Attention attracts peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are bad for business. Leave or pay docking fees. Crichton's expression was grim. We need to get off this station fast. If peacekeepers are actively patrolling here, our presence will be reported within arms. Can we find a ship, something to get us mobile? With what currency? We don't have local credits, tradable goods, or anything these people value. Crichton paused, thinking. Unless, Rigel mentioned he had contacts in the commercial networks. If we can find an information broker willing to trade intel for something we have, Colonel O'Neill. A familiar voice cut through the crowd, high-pitched and imperious. By the sacred lineage of the Dominar dynasty, is that you? Through the throng of alien beings, a small gray figure on a hover throne navigated with surprising speed. Rigel XVI, deposed Dominar and certified pain in the ass, looked thinner than O'Neill remembered, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. Rigel, Daniel's surprise was genuine. What are you doing here? Commerce, Dr. Jackson. What else would a deposed monarch do when separated from his allies and forced to survive in hostile space? Rigel's hover throne brought him to eye level with O'Neill. I've been trading information, brokering deals, and staying one step ahead of peacekeepers who'd love to recapture me. The question is, what are you doing here? I thought you returned to your universe. We did. Then, Scorpius invaded Stargate Command using dimensional rifts. We came back to stop him and find Moya's crew. O'Neill lowered his voice. Where are the others? Rigel's expression grew somber, an unusual look for the typically self-centered Dominar. Scattered. Dargo went to ground in the Scaran border territories, seeking weapons dealers who might have equipment to fight Scorpius. Jean returned to her Delvian sanctuary, but I heard rumors that the peacekeepers had raided it looking for her. Chiana is being Chiana, probably running cons on the criminal networks. And Pilot remains with Moya in hiding, but the ship is too damaged to travel far. Can you take us to Moya? For the appropriate compensation, of course. Rigel's calculating expression returned. I've acquired a small transport vessel through creative negotiations with a Tavlek trader. It's cramped, smells terrible, and the life support system occasionally fails, but it flies. I could be persuaded to share it if you have something valuable to trade. O'Neill pulled a Hershey's chocolate bar from his tactical vest, part of his personal stash that Carter always rolled her eyes at, but he insisted on carrying. How about this? Genuine Earth chocolate, probably worth a fortune in novelty value alone. Rigel's eyes widened. He snatched the chocolate bar with surprising speed, examined it carefully, and took a tentative bite. His expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something approaching religious ecstasy. By the sacred, this is, Colonel, you have made a deal. My transport is yours. He consumed another bite, savoring it like fine wine. And if you have more of these, I may be persuaded to provide additional services. Get us to Moya first, then we'll talk about chocolate diplomacy. They followed Rigel through the commerce station's chaotic corridors, past vendors selling weapons, spices, technology, and things O'Neill couldn't identify. Crichton moved with practiced ease, his body language screaming, "Don't mess with me," in a way that kept most of the predatory types at a distance. Teal'c's imposing presence helped. Even aliens who'd never seen a Jaffa recognized a warrior when they saw one. They reached a docking bay where a small, battered transport ship sat among dozens of similar vessels. Rigel wasn't lying about the smell. It hit them like a physical force the moment the airlock opened. "Good Lord," Daniel gasped, covering his nose. "What died in here?" "A Hynerian livestock merchant and his cargo, approximately 2 cycles ago. I acquired the ship from his widow at a very reasonable price." Rigel navigated toward the pilot controls with practiced ease. "The smell is a deterrent to thieves. Very effective." Carter was already at the ship's navigation console, her technical skills transcending species and technology. "I'm accessing local stellar charts. If I can cross-reference against known pulsar positions, I should be able to determine our location relative to where we left Moya." "How long?" O'Neill asked. "Give me 10 minutes, sir." 10 minutes in a ship that smelled like dead livestock and Hynerian cleaning products. O'Neill had endured worse. Interrogation by Gold, replicator attacks, Ori prior speeches. But this ranked somewhere in the top 20 terrible experiences. Teal'c stood by the airlock, his expression stoic but his nostrils flaring slightly. "O'Neill, I believe this vessel's odor may constitute a form of biological warfare." "Noted, Teal'c. Carter, make it 5 minutes." "Working on it, sir." The ship's engines rumbled to life, a sound that suggested they might explode at any moment, but somehow held together. Rigel piloted them out of the docking bay with surprising skill, navigating through the commerce station's traffic lanes with casual disregard for safety protocols. "Rigel, have you heard anything about Scorpius's activities?" Crichton asked, strapping into one of the passenger harnesses that was clearly designed for a species with a different anatomical structure. "Only rumors and whispers. He's been quiet since the dimensional rift incident, too quiet. When Scorpius goes silent, it means he's planning something significant." Rigel glanced back at them. "Word in the commercial networks is that he's consolidating forces, calling in favors from Scaran allies and preparing for a major operation. Nobody knows the target, but the smart money is betting it involves your Earth." O'Neill's jaw tight. "Then we need to find him first." Easier said than accomplished. Scorpius doesn't broadcast his location, and his command carrier can be anywhere in the Uncharted Territories. Rigel paused. "But Pilot might have sensor data from when Moya escaped. If we can access her logs, we might be able to track where Scorpius went after the attack. Carter looked up from the navigation console, her expression triumphant. Got it. Moya's last known coordinates are approximately 2 light-years from here, near a nebula called the Tormented Expanse. The gravitational anomalies there would interfere with Peacekeeper sensors. It's a logical hiding place for a damaged Leviathan. How long to get there in this vessel? O'Neill asked. Approximately 6 arms at maximum speed, Rigel replied. But I should warn you, the Tormented Expanse earned its name. Spatial distortions, random gravitational shifts, and enough radiation to cook anyone without proper shielding. Moya can navigate it because she's a living ship with adaptive biology. This transport, he gestured at the rattling hull around them, will be significantly more challenging. Then we'd better hope pilots feeling friendly when we arrive, O'Neill said. Because if Moya's defensive systems shoot us down before we can identify ourselves, this whole mission ends before it begins. The transport ship accelerated toward the Tormented Expanse, carrying SG-1 deeper into the Uncharted Territories. Behind them, the commerce station dwindled to a point of light. Ahead, somewhere in the hostile expanse of alien space, their allies waited, scattered, hunted, and unaware that help had arrived. But between them and reunion stood Scorpius, planning his next move with the patience of someone who'd spent cycles perfecting torture into an art form. O'Neill checked his weapons one more time, ensuring magazines were full and equipment was secure. The mission had officially begun, and the tactical situation was a nightmare. Insufficient intelligence, scattered allies, superior enemy forces, and a dimensional bridge that might not reopen. Just another Tuesday for SG-1, except this Tuesday, the stakes weren't just Earth. There were 2 universes, and Scorpius had the technology to threaten both. The hunt was on. The Tormented Expanse lived up to its name. Rigel's transport shuddered violently as they entered the nebula's outer boundary, gravitational anomalies yanking the small ship in unpredictable directions. Through the viewport, O'Neill watched colors that didn't exist in normal space swirl and pulse, deep purples bleeding into sickly greens, punctuated by bursts of radiation that lit up Carter's sensor array like a Christmas tree. Carter, please tell me this radiation won't kill us. Not immediately, sir. The transport's shielding is holding barely, but prolonged exposure would be problematic. She frowned at her readings. Sir, I'm detecting something else. Energy signatures that match Moya's biological profile, but they're fragmented across multiple vectors. It's like she's deliberately scattering her emissions to avoid detection. Smart, Crichton said from his position near the pilot controls, helping Rigel navigate through a particularly nasty gravitational eddy. Pilot knows every trick for hiding from peacekeepers. They've been hunted for cycles. They're experts at going dark. Teal'c stood at the rear viewport, his warrior's instincts on high alert. O'Neill, we are being followed. A vessel maintaining distance but matching our course corrections. O'Neill moved to look. Through the swirling nebula gases, he caught glimpses of a ship sleek, predatory, definitely not friendly. Peacekeeper. Configuration suggests a Prowler-class fighter, Rigel said tensely, his small hands working the controls with surprising precision. They must have tracked us from the commerce station. I thought we'd lost them in the nebula's interference, but the Prowler opened fire. Pulse blasts stitched across the transport's shields, and the small ship lurched sideways. Alarms blared in whatever passed for Hynerian warning systems, high-pitched and incredibly annoying. Evasive maneuvers, O'Neill barked, though Rigel was already banking hard left, using a gravitational anomaly to slingshot them in an unexpected direction. This transport isn't built for combat. Rigel protested, even as he executed another desperate maneuver. We have minimal weapons, failing shields, and life support that's held together with hope and spare parts. Carter was already at the weapon controls, such as they were. The transport mounted a single pulse cannon, outdated and underpowered, but it was something. Sir, I can return fire, but our targeting systems are basic. I'll need to do this manually. Do it, she fired, pulse blasts lancing out toward the pursuing Prowler. Most missed, but one caught the fighter's wing, causing it to veer off momentarily. The Peacekeeper pilot was good, though professional, trained, and flying a superior craft. They came back around, lining up for another attack run. "Crichton, any brilliant ideas?" Daniel asked, gripping his harness as the transport spun through another evasive pattern. "Yeah, don't get hit. Prowlers are fast, maneuverable, and their pilots are trained from birth. In a straight fight, we lose." Crichton's eyes scanned the nebula's swirling chaos. "But this isn't a straight fight. Rigel, there, that radiation cluster at Mark 3-4. Can you lead them through it? That cluster would fry our shields in microts." "Exactly, but prowlers have lighter shielding than transports. They'll fry faster." Rigel's expression shifted from panic to calculating greed, the look of someone recognizing an angle. "Risky, suicidal, and completely insane. I approve." He banked the transport toward the radiation cluster, the ship groaning as stressed systems protested. The prowler followed, either not recognizing the trap or too committed to the pursuit to break off. They plunged into the radiation storm, and O'Neill felt the temperature inside the transport spike immediately. His tactical vest's radiation badge began to change color, not good. "Shields at 40%, Carter reported. 35-30. Through the viewport, O'Neill watched the prowler. Its shields flared brilliant white as radiation hammered them, and he could see structural stress forming along the fighter's hull. The Peacekeeper pilot tried to break off, but the gravitational anomalies made tight turns nearly impossible. The prowler's shields failed. Radiation poured through the hull breach, and the fighter tumbled out of control, its systems dying. It vanished into the nebula's depths, lost to the same hostile environment it had tried to use against them. "Shields at 28% and holding," Carter said. "We made it through. Barely." Rigel guided them out of the radiation cluster, his hover throne bobbing with what might have been relief or just turbulence. Never let it be said that Dominar Rigel the 16th doesn't earn his compensation. "Now, where is that magnificent chocolate you promised?" "After we find Moya," O'Neill said firmly. "And maybe after you upgrade this ship's life support so we can breathe without gagging." "I make no promises about the life support." Carter's sensor array pinged, a clean tone cutting through the various alarms. "Sir, I've got a solid lock on Moya's energy signature. She's approximately 50,000 kilometers ahead, nestled in the gravitational shadow of a protostar. The radiation and gravitational interference would make her nearly invisible to standard Peacekeeper sensors. Can we approach without spooking pilot? Last thing we need is Moya thinking we're hostiles and firing on us." "Allow me," Rigel said, activating a communication panel. He transmitted a sequence of tones, musical, complex, and clearly some kind of recognition code. "Pilot and I established emergency protocols during our time together. If Moya receives this signal, he'll know it's me." They waited, the transport drifting through the nebula's chaos while radiation danced across their diminishing shields. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Carter's console lit up with an incoming transmission. Not standard radio, but a biological signal that pulsed through the transport systems like a living thing. Pilot's multi-layered voice filled the cabin, carrying relief and surprise in equal measure. "Dominar Rigel, we believed you were lost or captured. How did you?" The voice paused as sensors detected the other life signs. "Colonel O'Neill, Major Carter, this is unexpected and most welcome." "Pilot, permission to dock?" O'Neill asked. "We've got a lot to discuss and not much time." "Granted, Colonel. Moya is opening her docking bay, but I must warn you she is severely damaged. The Peacekeeper attack left her starburst chamber inoperable, her sensory array partially blind, and her defensive systems compromised. She is fragile." "We'll be gentle," O'Neill promised. Rigel navigated the transport through the nebula's gravitational eddies toward a massive shadow that gradually resolved into Moya's familiar organic hull. But O'Neill's stomach sank as the damage became visible. Scorch marks covered entire sections of the living ship's exterior. Several of her sensory stalks were shattered stumps, and where her starburst chamber should have glowed with bioluminescent health, there was only dark, damaged tissue. They'd hurt her, badly. The transport glided into Moya's docking bay, a cavernous organic space that felt wrong without the usual bustle of activity. The hangar was empty except for a few damaged transport pods and equipment scattered in disarray. The lights were dimmer than O'Neill remembered, and the whole ship felt tired. As they disembarked, Pilot's voice echoed through the corridors with genuine emotion. "It is good to have allies aboard again. Moya has been lonely without her crew, and frightened. She knows the peacekeepers hunt her, and without her starburst capability, she cannot flee if they find this hiding place." They made their way through Moya's corridors toward the command tier, and O'Neill cataloged the damage. Bulkheads showed pulse weapon scarring. Some corridors were sealed with emergency biomembranes, Moya's equivalent of damage control, and the ever-present hum of a healthy living ship was reduced to a faint, labored pulse. Pilot awaited them in the command tier, his multiple arms working controls with practiced efficiency despite visible exhaustion. The crustacean navigator looked thinner, his shell less vibrant, but his 4 eyes brightened when they entered. "Colonel O'Neill, your return is most unexpected. We detected the dimensional bridge activation several solar days ago and assumed Scorpius had succeeded in creating a permanent portal to your universe. He tried, we stopped him, barely." O'Neill moved to Pilot's console, noting the damage readouts and system failures scrolling across organic displays. "Pilot, we need intelligence. Where did Scorpius go after the attack? What's he planning?" "Unknown. After deploying the ancient device that created dimensional rifts, he withdrew his forces systematically. No pursuit, no follow-up attacks, most unusual for Scorpius. He typically maintains pressure until his objectives are achieved." Pilot manipulated controls, bringing up sensor logs. "But before communications were severed, I intercepted encrypted peacekeeper transmissions." Scorpius was coordinating with Scaran command elements, discussing something called the Convergence protocol. Carter leaned forward, her analytical mind already working the problem. "Convergence protocol. That sounds like multiple operations coming together for a single objective." "Indeed, Major Carter, but I could not decrypt the specifics before Moya sustained damage and we were forced to flee." Pilot's voice carried frustration. "I have failed in my duty to gather intelligence." "You kept Moya alive," Crichton said firmly, approaching the console with the familiarity of someone who'd spent years working alongside Pilot. "That's not failure, that's survival, and survival means we can still fight back." Teal'c had been studying the sensor displays with his usual tactical focus. "Pilot, these peacekeeper transmission vectors, do they indicate Scorpius's likely location?" Triangulation suggests he transmitted from the K-Core sector, approximately 7 solar days travel from our current position at standard Leviathan speeds. But Moya cannot travel that distance in her current condition. Her propulsion systems are operating at 30% efficiency, and her starburst chamber. Pilot's voice wavered. "The damage is extensive. Natural healing will take many solar days, perhaps a full cycle." "We don't have that kind of time," O'Neill said. "Scorpius knows about Earth now. He knows about the Stargate. Every day we wait is another day he's perfecting his dimensional technology and planning his invasion." Daniel had been examining one of Moya's damaged sensory stalks, his archaeologist's eye noting the precise nature of the wounds. "These aren't random battle damage. Someone targeted specific system, starburst capability, sensors, communications. This was surgical, designed to cripple without destroying." "Scorpius wanted Moya alive," Crichton said quietly. "Probably figured she'd lead him to me eventually, or to other sources of wormhole knowledge. He's patient enough to wait." "Then we use that patience against him." O'Neill turned to face the team. "Carter, how long to repair Moya's critical systems?" She consulted her equipment, accessing Moya's biological readouts through Pilot's interface. "Sir, this isn't like repairing human technology. Moya's a living organism. She heals at her own pace. But Her expression shifted to that dangerous problem-solving mode. If we could accelerate her cellular regeneration in the damaged areas, provide her with raw materials and energy supplements, we might speed the process. I'd need to study her biology more, work with Pilot to understand her healing mechanisms, but theoretically. How long, Carter? Optimistically, 3 days for partial starburst capability, 5 for full mobility, but that's assuming we can find the materials she needs and nothing goes wrong. Something always goes wrong, O'Neill muttered. But 3 days is better than a full cycle. What materials are we talking about? Pilot's arms moved across the console, displaying complex biological requirements. Moya requires high-density nutrients, specific mineral compounds, and most critically, bioluminescent algae that grow only in certain nebula environments. The nearest source is the Rilcan Nebula, approximately 2 days' travel at this transport speed. Then we split up, O'Neill decided. Carter, you stay here with Pilot. Study Moya's biology, figure out how to accelerate her healing. Teal'c, Daniel, you're with Crichton. We take Rigel's transport to this Rilcan Nebula, gather the materials Moya needs, and get back here fast. Sir, splitting the team in hostile space is tactically unsound, Teal'c observed. Agreed, but we need Moya mobile if we're going to take the fight to Scorpius, and we can't do that sitting here waiting for her to heal naturally. O'Neill checked his weapons. Besides, gathering space algae from a nebula sounds relatively low risk compared to our usual missions. Crichton's laugh was bitter. Colonel, nothing in the Uncharted Territories is low risk. The Rilcan Nebula is controlled by Xenotan pirates who charge transit fees, harvest the algae themselves, and shoot anyone who tries to take their resources without paying. Of course they do, because why would anything be simple? O'Neill sighed. Fine, we negotiate with space pirates for algae. Still beats negotiating with gold system lords for Naquata. Carter was already deep in consultation with Pilot, her tablets interfacing with Moya's organic systems in ways that should have been impossible but somehow worked. Daniel pulled out his linguistic references, preparing for potential cultural negotiations with species he'd never encountered, and Teal'c checked his weapons with the calm efficiency of someone who'd learned that preparation prevented death. Rigel hovered near the exit, clearly eager to depart before anyone remembered he technically owed them services beyond basic transportation. If you're quite finished planning your suicidal resource-gathering mission, I should return to the commerce networks. Information doesn't gather itself, and someone needs to monitor Scorpius's movements. Actually, Rigel, you're coming with us, O'Neill said flatly. I most certainly am not. I am a Dominar, not an errand runner for. O'Neill pulled another chocolate bar from his vest. Hershey's dark chocolate, 70% cocoa, one of only 12 remaining in this universe. Rigel's protest died mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto the chocolate with the intensity of a junkie spotting their fix. You're a ruthless negotiator, Colonel O'Neill. Very well, but I require 3 bars, minimum. You get one now, one when we successfully gather the algae, and one when Moya is fully healed and mobile. 2 now, 1 upon completion. 1 now, 2 upon completion. Final offer. Rigel's hover throne bobbed with agitation, but greed won over pride. Agreed, but I want it noted that I am being exploited. Noted, now let's move. We've got 2 days' travel to a pirate-controlled nebula, limited time before Scorpius makes his next move, and a universe to save. O'Neill turned to Carter. Major, you've got 3 days to work miracles with Moya's biology. Think you can handle it? Carter's smile was confident despite the impossible task ahead. Sir, I've integrated human technology with ancient devices, reverse-engineered gold systems, and reprogrammed replicator base code. A living starship's healing process should be straightforward. That's what worries me. When you say straightforward, things tend to explode. Only occasionally, sir. They prepared to depart, and O'Neill took one last look at Moya's damaged command tier. The living ship had carried them to safety once before, sheltered them when they were lost, and now she was wounded and vulnerable. Getting her back to fighting condition wasn't just a tactical necessity, it was payback for a debt owed. As they boarded Rigel's transport for the journey to the Rilkan Nebula, Pilot's voice followed them through the corridors. "Colonel O'Neill, please exercise caution. The Uncharted Territories have grown more dangerous since your departure. Scorpius's activities have destabilized criminal networks, and desperate beings do unpredictable things." "Understood, Pilot. We'll be back before you know it." "I sincerely hope so. Moya asks that I convey her gratitude for your assistance. She remembers your team fondly and wishes you safe travels." O'Neill felt an unexpected lump in his throat. He'd formed attachments to alien allies before: Bradhack, Jacob Carter/Selmac, even some of the Takra despite their attitude. But there was something uniquely touching about a living starship expressing concern for their safety. "Tell Moya we'll bring her what she needs. And tell her to hang on. We're not losing anyone on this mission." The transport launched from Moya's docking bay, leaving the wounded Leviathan hidden in the nebula's gravitational shadows. Through the viewport, O'Neill watched her massive form recede into the distance, scarred, damaged, but still alive, still fighting. Rigel set course for the Rilkan Nebula, the transport's engines whining as they pushed through the tormented expanse's outer boundary and into the relatively calmer space beyond. The journey would take 2 days, which meant 2 days in a ship that smelled like death, eating MREs and hopping. They didn't encounter peacekeeper patrols. O'Neill settled into the uncomfortable passenger harness and tried to get some sleep. They'd need to be sharp when they reached the nebula, ready for negotiations, combat, or the chaotic mixture of both that seemed to define existence in the Uncharted Territories. Crichton sat across from him, staring out the viewport at alien stars with an expression O'Neill recognized. The look of someone who'd been lost so long that home felt like a dream, yet couldn't stop hopping for it anyway. Crichton questioned, "If we stop Scorpius, close the dimensional bridges permanently, and make sure Earth is safe, what then? You stay here. Try to find your own way home through Moya's crew." The astronaut was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I've been trying to get home for 3 years, but home might not exist anymore, not the way I remember it. My father's probably assumed I'm dead. My friends, my life, all of it's moved on without me." He turned to look at O'Neill. "How do you go back after something like this? After seeing things that shouldn't exist, fighting wars in alien space, becoming someone completely different from who you were?" "You go back anyway," O'Neill said quietly. "You go back because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means the bad guys win. You go back because people you care about deserve to know you're alive. And you go back because even if home isn't the same, even if you're not the same, it's still worth fighting for." "Sounds like you're speaking from experience." "Maybe a little." O'Neill closed his eyes, letting exhaustion pull him toward sleep. "Get some rest, Crichton. Tomorrow we negotiate with space pirates. Should be fun." The transport flew on through the darkness between stars, carrying them toward uncertain negotiations, hostile pirates, and the resources needed to heal a wounded ship that had become more than just transportation. She'd become family. Behind them, Carter worked alongside Pilot to unlock the secrets of Leviathan biology. Ahead, somewhere in the vast expanse of the Uncharted Territories, Scorpius planned his Convergence protocol. And scattered across hostile space, the rest of Moya's crew survived alone, unaware that allies had returned and the fight was far from over. The mission continued, one impossible task at a time. The Rilkan Nebula shimmered with bioluminescent beauty, vast clouds of glowing algae drifting through space like an alien aurora. Under different circumstances, O'Neill might have appreciated the view, but the 3 Zenith pirate ships blocking their approach made aesthetic appreciation difficult. "Unidentified transport, you have entered Zenith sovereign space," a harsh voice crackled over the comm, translated through Crichton's microbes into heavily accented English. "State your business or be destroyed." Rigel's hover throne bobbed nervously as he maneuvered the transport to a respectful distance from the pirate vessels. They were ugly ships, cobbled together from salvaged parts, bristling with weapons that looked barely functional but undoubtedly lethal. I should handle negotiations. Zenitans respect commerce and despise military posturing. Then why are they pointing guns at us? Daniel asked, studying the pirate ships through the viewport with his usual academic interest despite the danger. Because we haven't offered them profit yet. Rigel activated the comm. Zenitan Patrol, this is Dominar Rigel the 16th, representing a commercial venture seeking to purchase bioluminescent algae for medical purposes. We come prepared to negotiate fair compensation. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Then the lead pirate ship's weapons powered down fractionally, not standing down but acknowledging willingness to talk. Dominar Rigel, we know you. Deposed monarch turned information broker, wanted by peacekeepers, associated with the criminal Leviathan Moya. A pause. That association makes you high-risk clientele. It also makes me someone with access to unique commodities and information networks spanning multiple sectors. Rigel's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd negotiated from positions of weakness for cycles. I offer trade, currency, rare goods, or information of significant value in exchange for algae harvesting rights. Show us your cargo. Rigel transmitted a manifest that O'Neill knew was mostly fiction. The transport carried weapons, human MREs, and technical equipment, none of which would impress space pirates. But Rigel had added something that caught attention. Ancient technological components, origin unknown, potential research or resale value. That was technically true. Carter had packed several pieces of damaged ancient technology, fragments from SGC's archives that were broken beyond repair, but might intrigue alien collectors. The pirate ship's tone shifted from hostile to interested. Ancient technology, verifiable. Completely. I can provide energy signature scans demonstrating authenticity. Rigel glanced at O'Neill, who nodded permission. The Dominar transmitted data Carter had prepared, enough to prove the tech was genuine ancient origin without revealing its actual function or value. More silence. Then, you may approach the harvest platform for inspection, but your armed escort remains aboard, only the Dominar and one unarmed representative. O'Neill didn't like it. Standard ambush protocol involved separating targets from their firepower, but they needed that algae and Moya's clock was ticking. Rigel goes with Daniel. Daniel, you're the cultural specialist. Keep things friendly, don't volunteer information, and if shooting starts, hit the deck. Thanks for the confidence, Jack. Just trying to keep our archaeologist alive. We've gone through too many to break in a new one. Teal'c moved to the armory, securing his staff weapon. O'Neill, I recommend maintaining weapons readiness. Zenitan pirates are known for duplicitous negotiation tactics. How do you know that? During my service to Apophis, Jaffa forces occasionally encountered Zenitan raiders in contested space sectors. They are cunning, opportunistic, and willing to betray agreements if profit exceeds risk. Teal'c's expression was grim. We should anticipate treachery. Fantastic. Crichton, you've dealt with these guys before. The astronaut was checking his pulse pistol despite the order for an unarmed approach. Not Zenitans specifically, but pirates in general. Yeah. Rule 1, everything's negotiable. Rule 2, watch your back because they're definitely planning to screw you. Rule 3, have an exit strategy before you need it. Sounds like dealing with the NID. Probably worse. The NID at least pretends to care about Earth's well-being. Pirates only care about profit. Rigel and Daniel transferred to a small shuttle pod, barely more than a pressurized box with thrusters, and approached the Zenitan harvest platform. The structure was impressive in a ramshackle way. Massive collection arrays scooping algae from the nebula, processing facilities converting raw biomass into marketable products, and defensive emplacements that could vaporize anyone who tried stealing without paying. O'Neill watched through the transport's sensors as the shuttle docked. Daniel and Rigel disembarked in what looked like a trading hall filled with alien species of every description. Some were conducting legitimate business. Others were clearly criminals. O'Neill's years of combat experience let him spot predators regardless of species. "Carter, you reading this?" O'Neill transmitted to Moya using the encrypted channel they'd established. Carter's voice crackled back, slightly delayed by distance. "Receiving, sir. The platform's energy signatures are chaotic. Lots of weapons, minimal safety protocols, and some power sources I can't identify. Probably salvaged from a dozen different ship types." "Any sign of Peacekeeper presence?" "Negative, but that doesn't mean they're not monitoring the area. Scorpius has informants everywhere." On the platform, Daniel was doing what he did best, engaging in cultural exchange while Rigel negotiated. Through the visual feed from Daniel's concealed camera, O'Neill watched the archaeologist examine Zenith and algae processing techniques with genuine academic interest, asking questions that flattered his hosts while Rigel haggled over prices. The lead Zenith negotiator was a massive being, 3 meters tall, covered in scales that shifted colors based on mood, with multiple arms perfect for simultaneous tasks. It examined the ancient tech fragments with professional assessment, running scans, and consulting with technical specialists. "These components are indeed of ancient origin," the Zenith confirmed, its translated voice rumbling. "Value is moderate, damaged condition limits functionality. But collectors pay well for authenticity." It gestured to the algae storage tanks. "We offer 30 standard containers of processed bioluminescent algae, grade 3 medical quality." "Unacceptable," Rigel countered immediately. "Grade 3 is insufficient for Leviathan cellular regeneration. We require Grade 1, a minimum of 40 containers. Grade 1 commands premium pricing. Your offered goods do not justify such an exchange." And so the negotiation began in earnest, Rigel leveraging every angle while the Zenith pushed back with equal determination. Daniel provided running commentary through his camera, nodding cultural nuances and body language cues that helped Rigel adjust his approach. O'Neill was starting to think they might actually pull this off when Teal'c's voice cut through the calm. "O'Neill, sensors detect vessels approaching at high velocity. Configuration matches Peacekeeper marauders." "How many?" "2 squadrons, ETA 4 microts." O'Neill's tactical mind snapped to combat mode. "Carter, you hearing this?" "Affirmative, sir. Recommend immediate extraction. If Peacekeepers catch you at a known pirate haven, they'll attack without warning." But Daniel and Rigel were still on the platform, mid-negotiation, surrounded by potential hostiles. Extracting them would require time they didn't have, and abandoning them wasn't an option. "Teal'c, power up weapons. Crichton, get on the comm and warn the platform. Maybe the Zenithans will appreciate the heads-up." Crichton transmitted the warning, and chaos erupted across the Harvest platform. Pirates scattered to defensive positions, weapons platforms activated, and the lead Zenith's scales flashed angry crimson. "You brought Peacekeepers to our sovereign space," it roared at Rigel and Daniel. "We did no such thing," Rigel protested. "We're as surprised as you are." Through the viewport, O'Neill saw the Peacekeeper marauders dropping out of FTL, their sleek hulls already deploying fighter wings. This wasn't a patrol, this was a deliberate strike force. "They tracked us," Crichton said grimly. "That prowler we destroyed must have transmitted our location before going down. Scorpius knows we're gathering resources, which means he knows we're trying to repair Moya." The Peacekeepers opened fire on the Harvest platform, pulse cannons hammering shields and structure with professional efficiency. The Zenithans returned fire, their salvaged weapons surprisingly effective. Space erupted in a chaotic dogfight, pirates defending their territory versus military precision. "Daniel, Rigel, get back to the shuttle now," O'Neill ordered. But the platform was in lockdown, defensive protocols sealing all docking ports to prevent boarding actions. Daniel and Rigel were trapped inside while the battle raged outside. "Sir, we're locked in," Daniel reported, his voice strained as explosions shook the platform. "The Zenithans won't release docking seals until the attack is repelled." O'Neill made a split-second decision born of decades of leading impossible missions. "Teal'c, you're with me. Crichton, take the helm. We're going to provide covering fire while those two extract. Colonel, this transport isn't a fighter. Then we'll improvise. Wouldn't be the first time. They launched from their hiding position behind an asteroid, the transport's single-pulse cannon firing at peacekeeper fighters with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Teal'c manned the weapons station with practiced efficiency, his shots disciplined and measured to maximize their limited ammunition. A prowler peeled off from the main attack to engage them, recognizing the transport as a soft target. Its pilot was good, professional maneuvers, textbook attack patterns. But O'Neill had been flying combat missions since before this pilot was born. He threw the transport into a barrel roll that physics said shouldn't work with a ship this ungainly, used a debris field for cover, and led the prowler directly into a Zenithon weapons platform's firing solution. The pirates' automated defenses shredded the fighter without hesitation. "One down," O'Neill muttered. "Approximately 20 to go." The battle was going poorly for the pirates. Peacekeeper discipline and superior technology were overwhelming Zenithon numbers and home field advantage. Several pirate ships were already drifting hulks, and the Harvest platform's shields were failing under sustained bombardment. Inside the platform, Daniel and Rigel had found themselves in an unexpected alliance with their former negotiating opponents. The lead Zenithon unsealed an emergency weapons cache, distributing pulse rifles to anyone willing to defend the station. "Dr. Jackson, you know how to use peacekeeper weapons?" the Zenithon asked. "I've used P-90s, Zat guns, staff weapons, and various alien firearms across dozens of planets," Daniel replied, accepting a pulse rifle with the weary competence of someone who'd learned archaeology and violence weren't mutually exclusive in the Stargate program. "I'll manage." They defended a crucial bulkhead as peacekeeper boarding parties breached the platform's hull. Daniel's shots were precise. Center mass, controlled bursts, the muscle memory of too many firefights. Rigel used his hoverthrone's mobility to flank attackers, his small stature making him a difficult target. Outside, O'Neill and Teal'c were running out of ammunition and options. The transport's shields were at 15%. The pulse cannon had overheated twice, and there were still a dozen peacekeeper fighters actively engaging. Then something unexpected happened. A massive ship dropped out of FTL at the battle's edge, not peacekeeper, not Zenithon. Its configuration was unique, organic curves mixed with brutal weaponry, colors that suggested Luxon military design. It opened fire on the peacekeepers with devastating precision, heavy pulse cannons ripping through fighter formations. "That's a Luxon battle cruiser," Crichton said, disbelief and hope mixing in his voice. "But what's it doing here?" The answer came over an open comm channel, a gravelly voice O'Neill recognized immediately. "Peacekeeper forces, you have violated neutral trading space and attacked sovereign Zenithon territory. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." "Dargo," Crichton's shout was pure joy. "That crazy Luxon bastard actually found us." The Luxon warrior's ship tore through peacekeeper formations with the fury of someone who'd spent years fighting them. His weapons were clearly upgraded, not standard Luxon military issue, but custom modifications that hit harder and faster. Combined with renewed Zenithon resistance and the transport's harrying attacks, the tide turned. The peacekeeper commander recognized a losing tactical position and ordered retreat. The surviving marauders broke off, their fighters returning to dock before they jumped to FTL. In moments, the battle was over, leaving debris and damaged ships scattered across the nebula. "All forces cease fire," the lead Zenithon transmitted. "The peacekeepers have withdrawn. Damage assessment teams begin recovery operations." O'Neill brought the battered transport alongside the Harvest platform just as the docking seals released. Daniel and Rigel emerged, covered in scorch marks and looking exhausted but alive. They transferred back to the transport, and Daniel immediately collapsed into a harness. "Jack, I think I'm getting too old for this." "You and me both, Daniel." The Luxon battle cruiser maneuvered closer, and a shuttle launched from its bay. When it docked with the transport, the airlock opened to reveal Ka Dargo, towering, fierce, and grinning with genuine pleasure. "Crichton, O'Neill," Dargo's voice boomed as he entered, his qualta blade secured across his back. "When I intercepted Peacekeeper communications mentioning human activity near the Rilcan Nebula, I hoped it might be you, though I did not expect to find you engaged in commerce with Zenit and pirates." "We needed algae for Moya," Crichton explained, clasping Dargo's arm in a warrior's greeting. "She's badly damaged, hiding in the tormented expanse. Carter's working with Pilot to accelerate her healing, but she needs raw materials." Dargo's expression shifted to concern. "Moya lives. The last I heard, she had been destroyed in Scorpius's attack. I have been searching for survivors, following rumors and intercepted transmissions." He looked at each of them. "What of Jean, Chiana, Aaron?" "Aaron made it to Earth, warned us about Scorpius's dimensional attacks. She's recovering at our base." O'Neill decided to skip the complicated explanation about universes and Stargate Command for now. "Jean and Chiana, we haven't found yet." "Any intel on their locations?" "Rumors only. Jean was reported near the Delvian sanctuary worlds, but Peacekeeper forces raided several temples searching for her." "Chiana," Dargo's expression turned wry. "Chiana is Nebari. She could be anywhere, running any con under any identity. Finding her will require luck or waiting for her to find us." The lead Zenitan's voice interrupted over the comm. "Dominar Rigel, despite the unfortunate Peacekeeper interruption, I am prepared to honor our negotiation. Your warning of the attack, combined with your allies' assistance in the defense, demonstrates good faith. I offer 40 containers of Grade 1 bioluminescent algae in exchange for the ancient technology components and a favor to be claimed later." Rigel's eyes narrowed. "What favor?" "Unspecified. To be determined when I require it, within reason and not requiring suicide or permanent harm." It was a dangerous agreement. Open-ended favors often became traps, but they needed the algae and the Zenitan was offering generous terms considering the chaos. "Agreed," Rigel said after a long pause. "The favor will be honored provided it meets the stated parameters." "Acceptable. We will transfer the algae to your vessels immediately. And Dominar, you and your allies are welcome in Zenitan space. Anyone who fights Peacekeepers earns our respect." The algae transfer took an arm. 40 large containers loaded into both the transport and Dargo's battle cruiser. The Luxon warrior had converted a cargo bay into living quarters, and he'd clearly been operating alone for some time. But his ship was well armed, properly maintained, and fast enough to outrun most Peacekeeper vessels. As they prepared to depart, heading back toward the tormented expanse and Moya's hiding place, Dargo shared what he'd learned during his time separated from the crew. "Scorpius has been unusually active. He's consolidating forces, calling in debts from Scaran allies, and according to black market weapons dealers I consulted, he's purchasing technology for a major operation. They speak of dimensional weapons, reality-breaking devices, and invasions beyond normal space. He's planning to invade Earth," O'Neill said flatly. "Probably multiple strike points simultaneously using dimensional bridges he's created with ancient technology." "Then we must stop him before he achieves that goal." Dargo's hand went to his qualta blade, the gesture unconscious but telling. "I have been hunting Peacekeepers and gathering weapons specifically to confront Scorpius. If he threatens your world as he has threatened ours, we share a common cause." They jumped to FTL, both ships traveling in tandem toward the tormented expanse. The journey would take nearly 2 days, during which they'd plan, prepare, and hope that Carter had made progress healing Moya. O'Neill found Dargo on the battle cruiser's observation deck, staring at the stars streaking past in FTL. The Luxon warrior had removed his armor, revealing scars that told stories of battles fought and survived. Dargo questioned, "You've been hunting alone for how long?" 43 solar days since the attack scattered us. I have searched 12 sectors, interrogated 17 information brokers, and destroyed 6 Peacekeeper patrol ships that had the misfortune to encounter me." Dargo's voice carried both pride and loneliness. "But I have been alone. Luxons are warriors, yes, but we are also tribal. We value our chosen family. Being separated from Moya's crew has been, he paused, searching for words, difficult. I get that. My team, we've been together for years. Can't imagine being cut off from them. Yet you came back, through dimensional barriers across realities to aid allies you barely know. Dargo turned to face him. Why, your world is safe now. Scorpius was repelled. You could have sealed the barriers and forgotten about the Uncharted Territories. Could have, but that's not how we operate. We don't leave people behind and we don't ignore threats until they're neutralized. O'Neill leaned against the viewport, watching reality blur past. Plus, your crew saved our lives. Moya sheltered us. Aaron fought beside us. You helped us escape. That creates obligations. Obligations, an interesting human concept. Dargo's tone suggested he found it admirable rather than strange. Luxon honor operates similarly. Debts must be paid, allies must be defended, and enemies must face justice. Then we're on the same page. We find John and Chiana, we repair Moya, we gather our strength, and we take Scorpius down before he can threaten either of our homes. An excellent plan, simple, direct, and likely to result in glorious combat. Dargo's grin was fierce. I approve. They dropped out of FTL at the tormented Expanse's edge 2 days later, both ships navigating the gravitational chaos with practiced caution. Rigel transmitted the recognition codes, and Pilot responded immediately, his relief evident even through the biological communication systems. Dargo, you live. Moya is overjoyed. She feared the worst when communication ceased. I am difficult to kill, Pilot, as our enemies continue to discover. Dargo's voice softened. How is she? The damage, can she be healed? Major Carter has worked miracles. Come see for yourselves. They docked with Moya and the difference was immediately apparent. The corridors glowed brighter, the bioluminescence healthier. Damaged bulkheads showed new tissue growth and the ship's ambient pulse, her heartbeat, was stronger. Carter met them in the command tier, exhausted but triumphant. Her uniform was stained with something that looked disturbingly organic, and she had what appeared to be Leviathan cellular matter under her fingernails. Sir, good timing. We're about to test Moya's repaired starburst chamber, if this works. The ship shuddered, and O'Neill felt the familiar sensation of Moya gathering herself for the jump. Her biological engines ignited with power that had been absent before, and space-time tore open in a brilliant cascade of light and energy. They jumped. For 3 glorious seconds, Moya achieved full starburst, traveling millions of metras instantaneously, her damaged systems functioning at nearly full capacity. Then they dropped back into normal space, and Pilot's multi-layered voice carried pure joy. It works. Moya's starburst chamber is healed. Major Carter, your integration of Earth medical techniques with Leviathan biology has succeeded beyond all expectations. Carter's exhausted smile was worth everything. The algae provided the raw materials, but the real breakthrough was understanding that Moya's healing process could be enhanced using principles similar to human cellular regeneration therapy. I basically gave her a massive dose of growth factors and accelerated stem cell production. You turned a living starship into a giant science experiment and it actually worked, O'Neill said, genuine admiration in his voice. Carter, remind me never to doubt you again. You say that after every impossible mission, sir. Then you doubt me again the next time. Fair point. With Moya healed and mobile, Dargo's battle cruiser providing additional firepower and the team reunited, at least partially, the tactical situation had improved dramatically. They were no longer scattered refugees hiding from peacekeepers. They were a fighting force, small but dangerous, with the mobility to strike and the determination to win. Pilot, any luck tracking Scorpius's location? O'Neill asked. Yes, Colonel. While you were gone, I analyzed the encrypted transmissions more thoroughly. I have triangulated Scorpius's command carrier to the K-Core sector, specifically near an ancient derelict called the Untempered Schism, a spatial anomaly that defies conventional physics. He appears to be using it as a base of operations. Then that's where we go. O'Neill looked around the command tier at his assembled team, SG-1, Moya's crew, and unexpected allies who'd become family through shared struggle. We've got a mobile platform, weapons, and people who know how to fight. Time to take the offensive. Dargo's grin was predatory. Finally, I have been waiting to repay Scorpius for his crimes against us. When do we strike? Soon. But first we find Jean and Chiana. We go in with full strength or we don't go in at all. The mission was evolving, from desperate survival to coordinated assault, from scattered refugees to unified force. Scorpius had made the mistake of underestimating them, of assuming that separating them would keep them weak. He was about to learn otherwise. The Delvian sanctuary world appeared peaceful from orbit, lush vegetation covering entire continents, bioluminescent forests glowing softly in the twilight, and massive temple structures that seemed to grow from the land itself rather than being built upon it. It was the kind of place that radiated tranquility, which made the Peacekeeper patrol ships circling it all the more obscene. 3 marauders in low orbit, Carter reported from Moya's sensor station, configured for planetary surveillance and ground assault. They're scanning the surface systematically, looking for something specific. Jean, Crichton said quietly, Scorpius knows Delvians have abilities that could threaten his operations if he's captured her. We will liberate her, Teal'c stated with absolute certainty. We have not traveled across dimensions and repaired a Leviathan only to abandon allies when they are within reach. Dargo studied the tactical display with a warrior's eye. 3 marauders against Moya and my battle cruiser. The odds are nearly even, but orbital combat will alert every peacekeeper in the sector. We need a more subtle approach. Define subtle, O'Neill said, already suspecting he wouldn't like the answer. Moya inserts a landing party via transport pod while remaining hidden in the planet's magnetosphere. Dargo's cruiser positions for rapid extraction if needed. The ground team locates Jean and extracts before the peacekeepers realize we're here. That's not subtle, that's a halo insertion without the parachutes. O'Neill paused. I'm in, who else? I must go, Dargo said immediately. Jean is my friend. I will not leave her to peacekeeper interrogation. I'm coming too, Daniel added. If we're infiltrating Delvian temples, we'll need someone who understands religious sanctuary protocols and can communicate respectfully with the priests. Crichton checked his pulse pistol. And I've actually been to Delvian worlds before. I know the layout, the customs, the places someone might hide from peacekeepers. Teal'c stood. I shall accompany you, O'Neill. My symbiote provides advantages in hostile environments. Carter looked torn between duty and tactical sense. Sir, someone needs to coordinate from Moya. If the peacekeepers detect our presence, you'll need immediate extraction support. Agreed. Carter, your mission control. Keep channels open and be ready to pull us out if this goes sideways. O'Neill turned to Pilot. Can you get us planetside without those marauders noticing? Pilot's multiple arms worked the organic controls with practiced precision. Moya can achieve atmospheric entry on the planet's night side, using the magnetic field to mask our energy signature. A transport pod launch from low altitude would appear as natural atmospheric phenomena on peacekeeper sensors, assuming we time it precisely with local storm activity. And if we don't time it precisely, the marauders will detect the pod, trace it back to Moya, and we will be engaged in orbital combat while you are on the surface without extraction capability. So no pressure then. O'Neill grabbed his tactical vest and weapons. Let's move. We've got a blue priestess to rescue. The transport pod screamed through the Delvian atmosphere, buffeted by storm winds that made the descent feel like being inside a paint shaker. O'Neill's stomach reminded him why he preferred gate travel. Instant, no turbulence, and significantly less chance of burning up on atmospheric entry. They landed in a bioluminescent forest several kilometers from the nearest temple complex. The vegetation glowed with soft blue and green light, and the air smelled of something floral mixed with ozone. It was beautiful in an alien way that O'Neill had learned to appreciate during 6 years of gate travel. Dargo took point, his Luxon senses sharper than human ones in the low light. They moved through the forest with tactical precision, spacing maintained, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. The temple complex rose in the distance, its organic architecture blending seamlessly with the massive trees surrounding it. They encountered their first peacekeeper patrol at the temple's outer perimeter. 4 soldiers, heavily armed, are scanning the area with detection equipment. O'Neill signaled the team to halt, assessing the tactical situation. "Can we bypass them?" he whispered to Dargo. "Negative. They're positioned to cover all approaches. We must neutralize them quietly or find another route." Teal'c studied the patrol pattern with professional interest. "Their spacing is adequate but predictable. If we strike simultaneously at their weak points, we can eliminate them before they can transmit a warning." "I can get close," Crichton offered. "They won't expect a human working with Luxon warriors. I approach as a lost civilian, they lower their guard for a microt, you hit them." It was risky, relying on peacekeeper assumptions and split-second timing, but O'Neill had run similar plays dozens of times against Jaffa patrols. "Do it. But Crichton, if they don't buy it, you hit the deck and we come in shooting." Crichton moved into the open, his hands raised in apparent surrender, pulse pistol concealed behind his back. His body language screamed civilian panic, exactly what a lost human might display when encountering armed soldiers. The peacekeepers reacted exactly as predicted. They lowered their weapons fractionally, focusing on the unexpected human while their tactical awareness degraded. Crichton got within 3 meters before they realized something was wrong. "Now," O'Neill transmitted. They struck with synchronized precision. Teal'c's staff weapon took the leftmost soldier before he could raise his rifle. Dargo's Qualta blade extended into blade mode, closing the distance with Luxon speed to take the second. O'Neill's P-90 dropped the third with a controlled 3-round burst, and Crichton's concealed pulse pistol caught the 4th mid-turn. 4 hostiles down in under 2 seconds. Clean, professional, and most importantly, silent. "Drag the bodies into the forest," O'Neill ordered. "Daniel, check for communication devices. We need to know if they transmitted anything before we hit them." Daniel searched the corpses with the clinical efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times. No active transmissions detected. Their comm units were on standby. "Good. Let's move before someone notices they missed a check-in." They entered the temple complex through a service entrance Dargo knew from previous visits with Jean. The interior was even more beautiful than the exterior. Living wood shaped into architectural forms, bioluminescent moss providing soft lighting, and an atmosphere of profound peace that felt violated by their weapons and tactical gear. A Delvian priest appeared from a side corridor, tall, blue-skinned, with the same plant-like features as Jean. The priest's eyes widened at the sight of armed warriors in the sanctuary, but before anyone could speak, recognition dawned. "Ka Dargo, you return in troubled times." The priest's voice carried harmonics that made O'Neill's translator struggle. "The peacekeepers search for Pau Zato Jean. They have interrogated many, destroyed sacred spaces, and violated the sanctity of our refuge." "Where is she?" Dargo demanded, his usual gruff manner softening in the presence of religious authority. "Hidden in the deep sanctuary where their scanners cannot penetrate, but they grow impatient. Soon, they will simply destroy the temple level by level until they find her." The priest studied them with ancient eyes. "You come to extract her. This will bring violence to our sacred ground." "The violence is already here," Daniel said gently, his diplomatic skills engaging. "The peacekeepers violated your sanctuary first. We're just trying to save a friend and end the threat that caused this." The priest considered, then nodded slowly. "Follow, but know that what you do here will have consequences across many lifetimes." They descended through the temple's lower levels, passing Delvian priests who watched them with expressions mixing hope and concern. The deep sanctuary was a chamber carved from living rock, its walls covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like breathing. And in the center, meditating in a posture of profound peace despite the chaos above, sat Jean. She opened her eyes as they entered, and her serene smile carried genuine warmth. "Dargo, I knew you would come, though I did not expect you to bring Colonel O'Neill and his warriors." Her gaze fell on Daniel. "Dr. Jackson, your presence suggests the situation has grown more complex than mere peacekeeper persecution." "Jean, we don't have time for meditation," Dargo said, his concern overriding social protocols. "The peacekeepers will breach this sanctuary soon. We need to extract you now." "I am aware. I have been preparing." Jean rose with fluid grace. "But I cannot simply flee. The peacekeepers came here seeking information about dimensional anomalies, specifically about ancient devices that manipulate reality. They believe my people's mystical traditions hold knowledge relevant to Scorpius's research." O'Neill's tactical alarm bells rang. "Do they? Perhaps. Delvian philosophy explores the nature of existence, the boundaries between realities and the consciousness that underlies physical form. To Scorpius, such knowledge might provide insights into dimensional manipulation." Jean's expression grew troubled. "I have refused to share our sacred texts, but the Peacekeeper commander has threatened to execute one priest every Arn until I comply." "How many have died?" Daniel asked quietly. "3 so far. I have been delaying, using techniques to cloud their minds and disrupt their timelines. But my strength wanes, and soon I will no longer be able to protect them." An explosion rocked the temple above them. Dust fell from the ceiling and distant alarms began blaring. Through the calm, Carter's voice crackled urgently. "Colonel, Peacekeeper ground forces are breaching the temple's upper levels. They're using heavy weapons and moving systematically toward your position. ETA to your location, 6 minutes." "Copy that. Jean, we're leaving. Now." "What of the priests? I cannot abandon them to Peacekeeper vengeance." O'Neill looked at Daniel, who nodded in understanding. "We'll take them with us. Moya can shelter refugees, right?" "Moya welcomes all who seek sanctuary," Pilot's voice confirmed over the comm. "But Colonel, extracting a large group will significantly complicate the extraction." "Complications are what we do best." O'Neill turned to the Delvian priest who'd guided them. "How many in the temple currently?" 47 priests and acolytes, but evacuating all would require time we do not have." Dargo's Qualta blade hummed as he extended it to rifle mode. "Then we buy time. Luxon battle doctrine is simple. When outnumbered and outgunned, create chaos and hold the choke points." Teal'c moved to the sanctuary's entrance, his staff weapon ready. "I concur. The Peacekeepers must funnel through narrow corridors to reach this position. We can defend effectively with minimal forces while evacuation proceeds." "Carter, how long to get the transport pod back here for extraction?" 10 minutes from your location, sir. But if we launch it now, the Peacekeepers will detect it and know exactly where you are." "They already know where we are. They're actively breaching the temple. Launch it. We'll hold until extraction arrives." The Delvian priests moved with surprising speed for beings dedicated to contemplation and peace. They gathered sacred texts, artifacts, and personal possessions, while Jean coordinated the evacuation with calm authority. O'Neill positioned his team at the sanctuary's choke points, 3 corridors the Peacekeepers would have to traverse to reach them. Dargo took the eastern corridor, his massive frame filling the narrow passage. Teal'c held the western approach, staff weapon charged and ready. Crichton and Daniel defended the southern route, their combined firepower adequate for the confined space. O'Neill stayed mobile, ready to reinforce whichever position needed help. The Peacekeepers came hard and fast, professional soldiers executing room-clearing procedures with textbook precision. They led with stun grenades, followed by suppressing fire, advancing in coordinated fire teams. Dargo's roar echoed through the corridors as he engaged, his Qualta blade firing pulse charges that dropped Peacekeepers in their tracks. But they kept coming, stepping over fallen comrades without hesitation. Teal'c fought with Jaffa discipline, each staff weapon blast precisely aimed to maximize casualties while conserving energy. His position became a killing field. Peacekeeper armor crumpled under sustained fire, bodies piling up in the narrow corridor. Crichton and Daniel worked in tandem, their years fighting together creating unconscious coordination. Crichton's pulse pistol provided heavy fire while Daniel's modified Zat gun caught peacekeepers in electrical discharges that bypassed armor. But the peacekeepers were adapting. They brought up heavier weapons, frag cannons that could punch through walls, area denial weapons that filled corridors with superheated plasma. O'Neill watched the tactical situation deteriorate in real time. "Carter, we need that extraction now. Pod is 2 minutes out, sir, but the Peacekeeper marauders have detected it. They're moving to intercept. Pilot, can Moya provide fire support?" "Negative, Colonel. Revealing our position would compromise the entire mission." "But," Pilot paused, "Dargo's battle cruiser has repositioned. He can engage the marauders briefly, buying the extraction pod time." Through the command channel, O'Neill heard Dargo's battle cruiser opening fire, heavy weapons hammering Peacekeeper shields. The marauders broke off their intercept course, forced to deal with the unexpected threat. "Extraction pod landing in 30 microns, Carter announced. "Ground team, fall back to the Sanctuary's landing platform." "Everyone move," O'Neill ordered. "Teal'c, Dargo, rearguard action. Crichton, Daniel, get those priests to the platform." They retreated in tactical leapfrog, one element providing covering fire while the other moved, then switching. The Delvian priests ran with surprising speed, their blue robes flowing as they carried sacred texts and artifacts. Jeanne used her abilities to cloud Peacekeeper minds, creating confusion that bought precious seconds. The extraction pod screamed down from orbit, its shields flaring as Peacekeeper ground fire hammered it. The pilot, one of Moya's DRDs operating the controls remotely, brought it down hard on the landing platform, ramp already dropping. "Load up," O'Neill shouted, providing covering fire as priests scrambled aboard. A Peacekeeper frag cannon round hit the platform's edge, and the explosion threw Daniel sideways. He hit the ground hard, his pulse rifle clattering away. A Peacekeeper soldier advanced on his position, weapon aimed at center mass. Jeanne moved between them with speed that defied her serene demeanor. Her hands glowed with blue energy, and she released it directly into the Peacekeeper's chest. The soldier convulsed and dropped, every muscle in his body seized by whatever mystical force Jeanne commanded. "Dr. Jackson, are you injured?" Daniel groaned, accepting her hand up. "Just my pride, and possibly my ribs, thanks for the save. We protect those who protect us. It is the Delvian way." The last priests boarded the extraction pod, followed by Jeanne, Daniel, and Crichton. Dargo and Teal'c provided final covering fire, their combined firepower holding the Peacekeeper advance for crucial seconds. "Move," O'Neill ordered, and they sprinted for the pod. A pulse blast caught Dargo in the shoulder, spinning him around. He roared in pain and fury, his Qualta blade firing wildly as he stumbled toward the pod. Teal'c grabbed the Luxan warrior, half carrying him up the ramp as O'Neill provided suppressing fire. The pod launched before the ramp fully closed, atmospheric thrusters burning at maximum as they clawed for altitude. Peacekeeper fire chased them upward, pulse blasts hammering shields that were never designed for sustained combat. "Shields at 40%, Carter reported. 30, we're not going to make orbit at this rate." "Dargo's cruiser inbound," Pilot announced. "He's providing covering fire." The Luxan battle cruiser dove through the atmosphere with reckless disregard for safety, its heavy weapons raking Peacekeeper positions on the surface. The ground fire slackened as soldiers scattered for cover, giving the extraction pod precious seconds. They broke the atmosphere, the transition from air to void marked by sudden silence except for alarms and labored breathing. The extraction pod limped toward Moya, its shields flickering and hull scored by dozens of impacts. They docked, and O'Neill did a quick head count. All the Delvian priests had survived. His team was battered but intact, and Jean was examining Dargo's shoulder wound with professional concern. The damage is significant but not life-threatening. I can heal this, but you will require rest afterward. Jean's hands glowed with that blue energy again as she worked on the Luxon's injury. Dargo grunted, too proud to admit pain but accepting the healing. We succeeded. Jean is safe, the priests are rescued, and the peacekeepers failed to extract sacred knowledge. Yeah, but we also just kicked the hornet's nest, Crichton observed. Scorpius is going to be seriously pissed when he finds out we extracted Jean from under his forces. Good, O'Neill said flatly. Let him be pissed. Angry enemies make mistakes. Carter appeared from the command tier, her expression mixing relief and concern. Sir, we've got everyone aboard, but those marauders are pursuing. They're hailing us, demanding we return the stolen Delvian assets or be destroyed. Tell them we respectfully decline and suggest they discuss it with our weapons systems. Sir, Moya's weapons are designed for defense, not ship-to-ship combat. 3 marauders could overwhelm us. Which is why we're not fighting alone. O'Neill activated the comm to Dargo's battlecruiser. Dargo, you up for some orbital combat? The Luxon warrior's grin was visible even through the comm static. Always, O'Neill. Shall we show these peacekeepers what happens when they threaten our family? Pilot, coordinate with Dargo's tactical systems. Carter, I want maximum power to Moya's shields and weapons. Teal'c, you're on the defensive cannons. Everyone else, strap in and hold on. The battle erupted across high orbit, Moya and the Luxon cruiser against 3 peacekeeper marauders. It should have been a massacre. The marauders were purpose-built warships, heavily armed and crewed by professional soldiers, but they hadn't counted on Moya's unpredictability. Pilot flew the living ship with organic grace that confounded targeting systems. Moya twisted through firing solutions that shouldn't exist, her biological nature allowing maneuvers rigid metal ships couldn't match. Dargo's cruiser provided heavy firepower, its upgraded weapons punching through marauder shields with devastating effect. And SG-1 brought Earth's tactical doctrine, asymmetric warfare, exploiting weaknesses, creating chaos that disrupted enemy coordination. Target their command modules, Carter suggested, analyzing marauder schematics. Peacekeepers centralize control, disable their commanders, and the ships become significantly less coordinated. Teal'c adjusted Moya's defensive cannons, targeting the bridge sections of the nearest marauder. His shot was precise, punching through shields to crater the command module's armor. The Marauders' formation discipline immediately degraded as junior officers scrambled to establish a new command structure. Dargo's cruiser capitalized on the confusion, hammering the damaged Marauder with everything it had. The Peacekeeper ship's shields failed, and secondary explosions rippled across its hull. It broke off, limping away from the battle with drive systems failing. 2 Marauders left, but they were adapting, coordinating fire to pin Moya between overlapping fields of fire. Pulse blasts hammered the Leviathan's shields, and O'Neill felt the ship shudder with each impact. "Shields at 60%, Carter reported. "We can't sustain this much longer." "Pilot, can Moya starburst?" "Yes, but the starburst will destabilize local spacetime. Any ships caught in the transition field would be torn apart, including Dargo's cruiser if he's too close." "Dargo, fall back. We're about to do something crazy." That statement applies to most of your tactical decisions, O'Neill. Specify the type of crazy. The kind where Moya starbursts and hopefully drags the Marauders into an interdimensional blender. There was a pause, then Dargo's laugh boomed over the comm. "I approve, executing tactical withdrawal." The Luxon cruiser accelerated away from the battle, leaving Moya apparently alone and vulnerable. The remaining Marauders pressed their advantage, closing the distance to maximize weapons effectiveness. "Pilot, on my mark, full starburst. right into their formation. Colonel, that is exceptionally dangerous. Moya has never attempted a combat starburst at such close range. First time for everything. Mark, Moya screamed, that distinctive cry of a leviathan initiating starburst, and reality folded. The two marauders, caught at point-blank range when the starburst field activated, were pulled into the dimensional transition. Their rigid structures couldn't handle the stress. O'Neill watched through the viewport as one marauder simply came apart, its hull shredding like paper in a hurricane. The second tried to compensate, but its drive systems exploded when forced through space-time they weren't designed to traverse. Moya emerged from starburst 1,000,000 meters away, intact and triumphant. The marauders were gone, destroyed by the same dimensional mechanics they'd been hunting. Silence filled the command tier. Then Crichton started laughing, slightly manic, definitely relieved. You use starburst as a weapon, that's insane and brilliant, and I'm so glad it worked. Pilot damage report. Moya is exhausted but undamaged. The starburst chamber will require rest, but she is capable of additional jumps if necessary. Pilot's voice carried both pride and concern. However, Colonel, what we just did will attract attention across multiple sectors. Destroying 2 peacekeeper marauders is not a subtle act. Subtlety's overrated. Besides, we're past the point of hiding. O'Neill pulled up the tactical display, showing their position relative to the K-Core sector where Scorpius was reportedly operating. We've got Jean back, Moya's healed and combat capable, Dargo's cruiser for heavy firepower, and a team that's proven it can take on peacekeepers and win. Now we need to find Chiana, and then we take the fight to Scorpius. Daniel looked up from where he'd been helping Delvian priests settle into Moya's guest quarters. Jack, we're talking about assaulting whatever base Scorpius has established. He'll have command carrier support, Scaran mercenaries, and ancient technology we don't fully understand. Even with everything we've accomplished, the tactical odds are terrible. Yeah, I know. They usually are. O'Neill studied the star chart, nodding the distance to the K-Core sector. But here's what Scorpius doesn't know. We've got 2 teams from different universes working together. We've got living ship biology he can't predict, Earth weapons he's never encountered in sustained combat, and people who are really, really tired of his shit. Jean approached, her healing session with Dargo complete. Colonel O'Neill, I must inform you of something I learned during my meditation while hiding from the peacekeepers. The Delvian mystical traditions speak of a convergence, a moment when dimensional barriers weaken and realities overlap. Scorpius's use of ancient devices may be deliberately creating this convergence. Why would he want that? To open permanent bridges between universes. Not temporary rifts like what brought you here, but stable portals that would allow sustained invasion forces. Jean's expression was grave. If he succeeds, Earth would face not just peacekeeper forces, but Scaran armies, Nebari infiltrators, and every species in the Uncharted Territories seeking new territories to exploit. Carter's face went pale. Sir, if multiple dimensional bridges opened simultaneously across Earth, the SGC couldn't possibly defend them all. We'd be overwhelmed in hours. Then we make sure it doesn't happen. O'Neill turned to Pilot. We need Chiana. Any idea where she might be? I have been monitoring black market communication channels, Pilot reported. There are rumors of a Nebari confidence artist operating in the Krelker trade nexus, matching Chiana's description. She has been acquiring resources and information while staying ahead of Nebari authorities who wish to return her to conformity. Nebari conformity, Daniel asked. Mental conditioning that removes free will and individuality, Crichton explained, his voice tight with old anger. The Nebari government uses it to control its population. Chiana escaped that fate once. They've been trying to recapture her ever since. Sounds like we're rescuing another team member from hostile forces, starting to see a pattern here. O'Neill checked his weapons, already planning the next extraction. Pilot, set course for this Krelker trade nexus. How long? 2 solar days at standard speeds. 1 day if we utilize Starburst. but that would deplete Moya's energy reserves significantly. Standard speeds, then. We'll use the time to plan the assault on Scorpius, rest up, and prepare for what's coming. O'Neill looked around the command tier at his assembled team. Humans and aliens, soldiers and priests, warriors and scientists, all united by shared purpose and hard-won friendship. They'd come a long way from that first chaotic meeting on Moya. They'd survived battles, extractions, dimensional jumps, and impossible odds. And somehow they'd become something more than individual crews thrown together by circumstance. They'd become family. Everyone get some rest, O'Neill ordered. In 2 days we find Chiana. After that we take the fight to Scorpius and end this threat permanently. Questions? Teal'c raised one eyebrow fractionally. Indeed, O'Neill. Do we have a plan for assaulting Scorpius's base beyond take the fight to him? Working on it. Carter, Dargo, you're with me. We're going to war game this until we have an approach that doesn't end with all of us dead. That significantly narrows our tactical options, Teal'c observed. Yeah, well, I prefer plans where we survive. Call me old-fashioned. As the team dispersed to their various tasks, rest, planning, healing, O'Neill stood at Moya's viewport watching the stars stream past. Somewhere ahead, Chiana waited, unaware that rescue was coming. And beyond her, in the K-Core sector, Scorpius prepared his convergence protocol, unaware that his victims had united across dimensions to stop him. The endgame was approaching. 2 universes hung in the balance, and SG-1, alongside Moya's crew, would face their greatest challenge yet, but they'd face it together. The Krelker trade nexus sprawled across 3 interconnected asteroids, a lawless hub where species from across the Uncharted Territories conducted business that ranged from legitimate commerce to outright piracy. O'Neill hated it on sight. Too many exits, too many potential threats, and the distinct smell of organized crime wrapped in capitalism's thinnest veneer. Finding Chiana proved surprisingly easy. The Nebari was running a confident scheme involving fake ancient artifacts, gullible traders, and an escape route through the station's waste recycling system. When Dargo and Crichton cornered her in a dingy merchant stall, she was 3 steps ahead of security and 2 minutes from a profitable exit. Crichton, Dargo, her surprise was genuine, followed immediately by her characteristic mischievous grin. You're alive, and you brought the Earth Warriors. This is either a rescue or a really elaborate arrest. Please say rescue, I've been so bored running solo cons. Rescue, Crichton confirmed, pulling her into a brief hug. But we need to leave now. Scorpius is planning something catastrophic and we need everyone together to stop it. Catastrophic, my favorite kind of problem. Chiana grabbed her bag of recently acquired valuables, some legitimate, most definitely not. Lead the way. The reunion on Moya was chaotic and heartfelt. The crew that had been scattered across the Uncharted Territories was finally together again. Dargo, Jean, Chiana, Aaron, recovering but mobile, Rigel, Pilot, and Crichton, alongside SG-1 and the Delvian refugees. Moya's corridors filled with voices, the living ship practically humming with contentment at having her family aboard. But celebration gave way to grim planning. Carter's analysis of Scorpius's convergence protocol revealed the terrifying scope of his ambition. He intended to open dimensional bridges at 17 strategic locations across both universes simultaneously, creating an invasion network that would be impossible to defend against. We can't be in 17 places at once, Daniel observed, studying the star charts with growing concern. We don't need to be, O'Neill countered. We just need to be in one place, wherever Scorpius is controlling the convergence from. Take out the command center, collapse the entire network. The assault on the untempered schism came 3 days later. Moya and Dargo's cruiser, supported by information Chiana had stolen from peacekeeper databases, navigated the spatial anomalies' chaotic physics to reach Scorpius's base, a massive ancient facility he'd converted into a dimensional weapons platform. The battle was brutal. Peacekeeper defenders, Scaran mercenaries, automated defense systems, and Scorpius himself commanding from the ancient control chair. SG-1's tactics, Moya crew's improvisation, and sheer desperate determination carried them through corridors filled with hostile forces. Carter and Crichton, working together, managed to access the ancient systems and discovered the horrifying truth: Scorpius had already initiated the convergence. The dimensional bridges were forming, and Earth had less than an hour before invasion forces began pouring through. In the facility's heart, O'Neill confronted Scorpius one final time. The hybrid sat in the ancient control chair, his consciousness spread across dimensional networks, coordinating the coming invasion with the precision of a chess master. "You cannot stop this, Colonel," Scorpius said, his voice carrying across multiple realities simultaneously. "The convergence is inevitable. Your universe and mine will merge, and a new order will emerge." "Here's the thing about inevitable," O'Neill replied, nodding to Carter. "We've stopped it before." Carter triggered the program she and Crichton had designed, a virus that exploited the dimensional bridge's quantum entanglement, turning Scorpius's own network against itself. The bridges didn't just close, they inverted, creating feedback loops that cascaded through the ancient device with catastrophic results. Scorpius screamed as the control chair overloaded, his consciousness torn across collapsing dimensional barriers. The facility began tearing itself apart, reality fracturing as the convergence protocol failed catastrophically. "Everyone out, now!" O'Neill ordered the team sprinting for Moya as explosions ripped through ancient technology never meant to be weaponized. They escaped seconds before the untempered schism consumed Scorpius's facility entirely, the spatial anomaly swallowing the ancient device, the dimensional bridges, and Scorpius himself into a singularity that physics couldn't explain and no one wanted to examine closely. The threat was ended. Earth was safe. The dimensional barriers stabilized, and the bridges closed permanently. No more crossings between universes, no more invasions, no more Scorpius. But that meant no more going home for Crichton. On Moya's observation deck, the astronaut stood with O'Neill, watching stars that belonged to a different universe than the one he'd been born in. 3 years lost in space, and now the door home had closed forever. "I'm sorry," O'Neill said quietly. "We tried to keep one bridge open, but..." "No, physics doesn't care about sentiment." Crichton's voice was steady despite the pain underneath. "Besides, I've got family here now. Moya's crew, you guys, until you find another way home, and a whole universe of impossible things to explore. Could be worse. Could be better, too." "Yeah, but worse is what I'm used to." Crichton managed a smile. "Tell Earth I made it okay. When you get back, tell them John Crichton died doing something worthwhile. Saving 2 universes sounds like a decent legacy." 1 month later, Carter succeeded in creating a temporary dimensional bridge using Moya's biology and the last traces of ancient energy. It would last 90 seconds, enough for SG-1 to return home, but not enough for Crichton. The farewell was everything such moments should be: honest, painful, and filled with promises to remember. Then SG-1 stepped through the gate one final time, leaving allies behind who'd become family. They emerged in SGC's gate room to alarms, weapons, and General Hammond demanding explanations. The debriefing took 17 hours. The mission report was classified at levels that didn't officially exist, and Crichton's name was added to a memorial wall that honored those lost in service to Earth's defense. But somewhere in another universe, aboard a living ship navigating the Uncharted Territories, John Crichton was alive, fighting alongside warriors and thieves, and a crew that understood what it meant to be lost and found. 2 universes forever separated, 2 teams forever changed, and the knowledge that sometimes saving the world meant leaving pieces of yourself behind, but doing it anyway because some things were worth any cost. The mission was complete. Earth survived, and in the vast expanse between realities, friendships forged in impossible circumstances endured across dimensional barriers that even ancient technology couldn't permanently breach. Indeed, more stories await.